Daeho wiped the sweat from his forehead as he locked the last storage container. The twin suns of Threshold 7 were finally setting, painting the sky in shades of purple and orange. He had been working at the supply depot for 3 years now, and the routine had become as familiar as breathing. Lock the containers, check the inventory logs, seal the main door, and walk the half-mile back to his small living quarters. The frontier colony wasn't much to look at. A few hundred people living in prefabricated buildings, trying to make a life on a planet that didn't quite want them there. But it was quiet, and quiet was exactly what Daeho needed. After everything that had happened back on Earth, quiet felt like a blessing. He was about to activate the security system when he heard it. A soft, scratching sound coming from behind the storage shed. Daeho froze, his hand moving instinctively to the plasma cutter he kept on his belt. It wasn't much of a weapon, but it was better than nothing. The scratching came again, followed by a small, desperate sound that might have been a whimper. Daeho moved slowly around the shed, his boots crunching on the red dirt. The colony had protocols for this. Any unknown contact was supposed to be reported immediately. Security would handle it. That was the smart thing to do. But something made him hesitate. He peered around the corner of the shed and saw it. A small creature no bigger than a human child was huddled between two supply crates. Its skin was a pale blue-gray color, covered in what looked like patterns that flickered weakly with a soft light. The creature's body was thin, too thin, and its movements were slow and unsteady. It was clearly dying. The creature's large eyes fixed on Daeho, and he saw something in them that made his chest tighten. Fear, yes, but also desperate hope. The same look he had seen in the mirror 3 years ago, after the pirate raid that took his wife and daughter. "Hey," Daeho said softly, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. "It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you." The creature made a small chirping sound and pressed itself further into the corner. Its light patterns dimmed even more, until they were barely visible. Daeho slowly lowered himself to a crouch, making himself smaller and less threatening. He had no idea what this creature was or where it came from. The colony had minimal contact with alien species, and most of that was carefully controlled by the authorities. But none of that mattered right now. What mattered was that something small and helpless was starving to death behind his shed. "You're hungry, aren't you?" Daeho said, keeping his voice gentle. He slowly reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out the protein bar he had saved for his walk home. The creature's eyes followed the movement. He unwrapped the bar and broke off a small piece, then placed it on the ground between them. The creature stared at it for a long moment, then looked back at Daeho, as if asking permission. "Go ahead," he said. "It's okay." The creature moved forward with painful slowness, its thin limbs shaking with effort. It grabbed the piece of protein bar with small, delicate fingers and brought it to its mouth. The moment it tasted the food, its eyes widened, and it made a sound that was almost a sob. Daeho felt his throat tighten. He broke off another piece and offered it directly. This time the creature took it from his hand, its touch surprisingly warm. Within seconds, the entire protein bar was gone. "Still hungry?" Daeho asked. The creature made another chirping sound, more urgent this time. He stood up carefully and walked to the storage shed, entering his access code. The creature watched him with those enormous eyes, ready to flee at any moment. Daeho grabbed a case of emergency rations and a water container, then returned to his spot on the ground. For the next 20 minutes, he watched the creature eat. It devoured 2 full meal packs and drank almost a liter of water. As it ate, the light patterns on its skin began to glow more brightly, pulsing with soft blues and greens. The creature looked up at Daeho and made a series of soft sounds, placing one small hand over its chest. It seemed like a gesture of gratitude. "You're welcome," Daeho said, smiling despite himself. "Do you have somewhere to go? Family?" The creature tilted its head, clearly not understanding his words, but responding to his tone. It stood up, much steadier now, and took a step toward him. For a moment, Daeho thought it might touch him, but instead it simply stood there, looking at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Then, before he could react, the creature turned and ran. Its movements were quick and silent, and within seconds it had disappeared into the growing darkness beyond the colony lights. Deho sat there for a long moment staring at the empty space where the creature had been. He should report this. He knew he should. Unmonitored alien contact was a serious violation of colony regulations. But something stopped him. Instead, he gathered up the empty food packages and water container, sealed the storage shed, and activated the security system. As he walked home, he kept looking over his shoulder, half expecting to see those glowing patterns in the darkness. His living quarters were small but comfortable. A bedroom, a bathroom, and a combined kitchen and living area. It was more than enough for one person. Too much, really, now that he was alone. He made himself a simple dinner and tried to watch some entertainment programs, but his mind kept drifting back to the creature. Where had it come from? Why was it alone? And most importantly, was it safe now? The next morning, Deho went to the depot early. He checked the area around the storage shed, looking for any sign of the creature, but found nothing. Part of him was relieved. Maybe it had found its way home, wherever that was. He mentioned the incident to his friend Taiman when the security officer stopped by for his afternoon patrol. Taiman's expression grew serious as he listened. "You fed it?" Taiman asked, shaking his head. "Deho, you know the regulations. Unmonitored contact can be dangerous. Some species see food sharing as a declaration of war. Others might see it as a contract. We don't know enough about most alien cultures to risk that kind of interaction." "It was starving," Deho said simply. "What was I supposed to do? Watch it die?" Taiman sighed. "No, I suppose not. But you need to report it properly. Fill out the forms at least. And if you see it again, call security immediately, promise me." "I promise," Deho said, though he wasn't sure he meant it. For the next 3 days, everything returned to normal. Deho worked his shifts, managed the inventory, and tried not to think about the small creature with the glowing patterns. He told himself it was fine, that it had moved on, that he would never see it again. He was wrong. On the evening of the 3rd day, the colony's alarm system suddenly activated. The sound was deafening, a piercing wail that meant only one thing: unidentified ship approaching. Deho ran outside with everyone else, staring up at the darkening sky. At first he saw nothing. Then through the clouds, something massive began to descend. It was a ship, but unlike anything in the human databases, it was enormous, easily the size of 3 colony buildings put together, with a design that looked both organic and mechanical at the same time. Strange lights pulsed along its surface in patterns that seemed almost familiar. The ship descended with terrifying precision, and Deho's blood ran cold when he realized where it was heading. It was coming straight for his supply depot. Security. Vehicles raced past him, their sirens adding to the chaos. People were screaming, running for the emergency shelters. But Deho stood frozen, watching the alien ship land in a cloud of dust and scattered debris. The side of the ship opened, and a ramp extended to the ground. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a figure emerged, and Deho's breath caught in his throat. It was massive, easily 8 feet tall, covered in what looked like natural armor plating that gleamed in the fading light. The figure carried weapons that hummed with barely contained energy, and every movement spoke of deadly purpose, and it was walking directly toward him. The security forces had formed a defensive line between the alien ship and the colony. Commander Hyunwoo stood at the front, his weapon raised, his voice amplified by speakers as he shouted warnings in multiple languages. None of them seemed to have any effect on the massive armored figure that continued its steady approach. Deho found himself being pushed behind the security line by Taemin, who had appeared at his side with his weapon drawn. "Get back," his friend said urgently. "Get to the shelters now." But Deho couldn't move. He was transfixed by the approaching figure. As it came closer, he could see more details. The armor wasn't metal, he realized, but something that had grown from the creature's own body. It had 4 arms, 2 of which held weapons while the other 2 hung ready at its sides. Its face was hidden behind a helmet that gleamed with the same pulsing lights he had seen 3 nights ago. The same lights as the small creature he had fed. "Hold your fire," Deho shouted suddenly, pushing past Taemin. "Don't shoot!" Are you crazy? Yunwu snapped, not taking his eyes off the alien. Get back behind the line. The alien stopped about 20 feet away from the security forces. It raised one hand and a holographic display appeared in the air, showing symbols that shifted and changed. A moment later, a mechanical voice spoke in broken but understandable Korean. Human. Which human touched my child? The question sent a wave of confused murmuring through the crowd. Hyunwoo glanced back at Daeho, his eyes narrowing. What is it talking about? Daeho swallowed hard. His mouth felt dry. 3 nights ago, I found a small alien creature behind my storage shed. It was starving. I gave it food and water. Then it left. The alien's helmet swiveled toward him, and Daeho felt the weight of its gaze even though he couldn't see its eyes. You, the mechanical voice said. You touched Nala, you fed her. It wasn't a question. It was an accusation. The alien began moving again, walking directly toward Daeho. The security forces tensed, weapons tracking its movement. Hyunwoo's finger moved to the trigger. Stand down, a new voice called out. Governor Ji-won was running toward them, her security detail struggling to keep up. Do not fire unless I give the direct order. But it might already be too late. The alien was moving faster now, its weapons beginning to glow with gathered energy. Daeho could see his death approaching in the form of this massive, terrifying creature, and he had no idea what he had done wrong. Then, from behind the alien, a small figure came running down the ship's ramp. Nala! The mechanical voice from the alien's translator said, but this time in a tone of alarm. The small creature, the one Daeho had fed, ran between its mother and the human security forces. It spread its small arms wide, its light patterns flashing in rapid, urgent sequences. It chirped and made those same soft sounds Daeho remembered, but louder now, more insistent. The massive alien stopped immediately. It knelt down, bringing its helmeted face close to the small creature. One armored hand reached out with surprising gentleness to touch the child's face. The two of them stayed like that for a long moment, and Daeho realized they were communicating somehow, though he couldn't understand how. Finally, the large alien stood up. With careful, deliberate movements, it removed its helmet. The face beneath was both beautiful and terrifying. Its features were sharp and angular, with skin the same blue-gray color as the child but marked with darker patterns that looked like battle scars. Its eyes were large and golden, with vertical pupils that fixed on Daeho with an intensity that made him want to step back. But he held his ground. The alien touched something on its armor, and the translator voice spoke again, clearer this time. I am Koresh of the Valkyrie warrior clan. This is my daughter Nala. You gave her food when she was dying. I didn't know she was dying, Daeho said, his voice shaking only slightly. I just knew she was hungry. Koresh stared at him for a long moment. Then she did something that shocked everyone present. She knelt down on one knee, her head bowed. The food you gave contained nutrients that counteracted poison in her system. My enemies tried to kill her to prevent me from reclaiming my position. Your kindness saved her life. Poison? Daeho felt sick. Someone poisoned a child? Politics among my people is brutal, Koresh said, still kneeling. Those who fear my return wanted to strike at me through her. They left her on this world to die slowly, thinking I would never find her before it was too late, but they did not account for human compassion. She raised her head and Daeho saw something in her eyes that looked like tears, though he couldn't be sure. You owe me nothing, human. But I owe you everything. By the old laws of my people, a life debt has been created. Your life is now bound to mine. I will protect you until my last breath. That's not necessary, Daeho started to say, but Koresh cut him off. It is not a choice, it is law. Your life saved hers, so my life is now yours to command. She stood up, and her forearms moved in a complex gesture that seemed to carry great meaning. I, Koresh, swear this before witnesses. The debt will be honored. Nala ran to Daeho and wrapped her small arms around his leg, chirping happily. Her light patterns were bright and cheerful, completely different from the dim, dying glow he had seen 3 nights ago. Taemin leaned close to Daeho and whispered, Do you have any idea what you've gotten yourself into? None whatsoever, Daeho admitted. Governor Ji-won stepped forward, her expression cautious but diplomatic. Koresh of the Valkyrie, I am Governor Ji-won of the Threshold 7 colony. We welcome peaceful contact with your people. However, your arrival has caused alarm. We have protocols for first contact situations. Your protocols do not concern me, Koresh said bluntly. I came for my daughter. I found her alive because of this human's actions. Now I will leave and he will come with me. What? Deho said. I'm not going anywhere. The life debt requires it, Koresh said, looking at him with confusion. You are now under my protection. That means you must stay where I can guard you. I have a life here, Deho protested. A job, friends, a home. I can't just leave. For the first time, Koresh looked uncertain. But the debt must be honored. How can I protect you if you are not near me? Before anyone could answer, a loud alarm began blaring from Koresh's ship. She immediately pulled her helmet back on and her weapons powered up to full charge. Her entire body language changed, becoming even more aggressive and ready for combat. What's happening? Yunwoo demanded, his own weapon raised again. Koresh's translator voice came through cold and hard. My enemies have tracked me here. A Velkari war fleet is approaching this system. They will arrive in less than one planetary rotation. How many ships? Jiwan asked, her face pale. Koresh was quiet for a moment, checking her equipment. When she answered, her voice was grim. 12 warships, each one capable of destroying this colony in minutes. The crowd erupted in panic. People started running for the emergency shelters, while security forces scrambled to establish defensive positions that everyone knew would be useless against that kind of firepower. Deho felt Nala's grip tighten on his leg. He looked down and saw fear in her large eyes. Without thinking, he picked her up, and she immediately wrapped her arms around his neck, hiding her face against his shoulder. Why are they coming here? Deho asked Koresh. They already got what they wanted. They poisoned Nala and left her to die. Because I am here, Koresh said, and because I found her alive. If Nala lives, I can reclaim my position. My enemies cannot allow that. They will destroy this entire world to make sure she dies. That's insane, Taemin said. You're willing to let innocent people die over politics? Koresh's golden eyes fixed on him. I am not willing, they are. There is a difference. She turned back to Jiwan. I will take my daughter and leave. Perhaps they will follow me and spare your colony. They won't, Jiwan said quietly. Will they? They'll destroy us anyway. To eliminate all witnesses and to make sure Nala truly is dead. Koresh was silent, which was answer enough. Deho felt a cold anger building in his chest. 3 years ago, pirates had attacked his transport ship because they wanted its cargo. They had killed his wife and daughter without a second thought, just obstacles in the way of profit. Now history was repeating itself. More innocents would die because of someone else's greed and ambition. No, he said quietly. Everyone turned to look at him. No, he repeated, louder this time. We don't run. We don't wait to die. We fight. Hyun-woo laughed bitterly. With what? We're a frontier colony with basic security weapons. They're coming with 12 warships. What do you suggest we do, throw rocks at them? We have something they don't expect, Deho said, looking at Koresh. We have you. And we have a life debt that apparently is very serious in your culture. Koresh stared at him. You want me to fight for your colony? I want us to fight together, Deho said. You said my life is yours to protect. Well, my life is here with these people. If you truly owe me a debt, then honor it by helping us survive. For a long moment, Koresh didn't move. Then slowly she began to make a sound that might have been laughter. Humans, she said, and there was something like respect in her voice. You are either the bravest species I have ever met or the most foolish. Perhaps both. So you'll help us? Jiwan asked. Koresh looked at Nala, still clinging to Deho, then back at the governor. I will honor the life debt. The colony meeting hall had never been so crowded. Every adult who could be spared from essential duties was packed into the space, and the air was thick with fear and anger. Governor Jiwan stood at the front, trying to maintain order while Koresh loomed beside her like a living monument to war. This is insane, someone shouted from the back. We should evacuate now while we still can. Evacuate where? Hyun-woo called back. The nearest colony is 3 weeks away by transport. The enemy fleet will be here in less than a day. We'd be caught in open space with no defenses at all. Then we surrender, another voice cried. Give them the alien child and maybe they'll spare us. Deho felt Nala press closer against him. She was sitting in his lap, trying to make herself as small as possible. He put a protective arm around her, and she made a small, frightened sound. Koresh's hand moved to one of her weapons. Any human who touches my daughter will die, she said flatly. This is not a threat. This is a simple statement of fact. Nobody is surrendering anyone, Jiwan said firmly. That's not who we are. But we need to be realistic about our options. A woman named Sunoke stood up from the front row. She was the colony's xenobiologist, one of the few people who studied alien life and cultures. Governor, I've been reviewing what little data we have on the Velkari. Their culture is built around honor and combat. If Koresh has sworn a life debt, she will defend us to the death. But more importantly, she can teach us about their tactics and weaknesses. 1 warrior against 12 ships, someone muttered. Great odds. Better than none, Sunoke shot back. Besides, humans didn't become a spacefaring species by giving up when things looked bad. We survived Earth's climate crisis, 3 separate wars, and a plague that killed 1 billion people. We can survive this. Her words seemed to steady some of the crowd. Daeho felt a spark of hope kindle in his chest. She was right. Humanity had faced extinction before and clawed its way back. They could do it again. Koresh was watching Sunoke with what might have been approval. You speak wisdom, human xenobiologist. My people respect strength and cunning. If you fight with intelligence rather than just courage, you may surprise them. Tell us about the enemy commander, Hyunwoo said. You said they were your enemies. Who leads them? Koresh's expression darkened. His name is Krell. He was once my lieutenant, my most trusted warrior. When the council voted to remove me from leadership, he led the coup. He is ambitious, cruel, and clever. He will not underestimate you simply because you are human. That's not encouraging, Taemin said. It should be, Koresh replied. A commander who underestimates his enemy makes mistakes. Krell will not. He will come prepared for a fight. But that also means he will follow predictable patterns. He is a military thinker. He will expect military solutions. Daeho felt something click in his mind. Then we don't give him a military solution. We give him something he won't expect. Everyone turned to look at him. He stood up carefully, still holding Nala. This colony wasn't built as a military base. It's a mining operation. We have explosives, heavy machinery, industrial chemicals. We have a whole network of tunnels under the colony. What if we use those things? Koresh's eyes widened slightly. A trap. You want to lure them into a trap. Exactly, Daeho said, his excitement growing. They'll expect us to defend from fortified positions, right? What if we let them land ground forces, draw them into the mining tunnels, and then collapse everything on top of them? That's suicide, someone protested. We'd be fighting in close quarters against trained warriors. But it would also neutralize their numbers advantage, Hyunwoo said slowly, his tactical mind clearly working. In the tunnels, it doesn't matter if they have 100 soldiers or 1,000. They can only come at us a few at a time. Soon Oke was nodding. And the mining explosives are powerful enough to collapse major sections. If we position them correctly, we could trap entire units underground. What about the ships in orbit? Ji-won asked. Even if we defeat their ground forces, they can still bombard us from space. Koresh pulled up a holographic display from her armor. It showed a 3-dimensional map of the space around Threshold 7. My ship has advanced weapons, but I cannot fight 12 vessels alone. However, if I can destroy 3 or 4 of their ships, the rest may reconsider their attack. Velkari respects strength. If the cost becomes too high, even Krell will retreat. So we need to make it expensive for them, Daeho said. On the ground and in space. The governor looked around the room at the frightened faces of her people. Then she straightened her shoulders and nodded. All right, we fight. Commander Hyunwoo, start organizing the defense. Work with Koresh on tactics. Soon, okay, you're in charge of weaponizing our industrial equipment. Daeho. I'll protect Nala, Daeho said immediately. If they want her, they'll have to go through me. Koresh looked at him with an unreadable expression. You would truly fight to protect my daughter? Even though you barely know her? Daeho looked down at Nala, who was watching him with those large, trusting eyes. He thought about his own daughter, who he had failed to protect 3 years ago. He thought about all the times he had stood by and let bad things happen because it was easier than getting involved. Yes, he said simply, I would. Something shifted in Koresh's expression. She placed one of her 4 hands on Deho's shoulder, and the gesture felt formal, important. Then you honor the debt more than I could have hoped, Deho of Earth. I am proud to call you clankin. The meeting broke up quickly after that. People hurried to their assigned tasks, moving with the desperate energy of those who know time is running out. Deho found himself walking with Koresh and Nala back toward his quarters. Tell me about your daughter, Koresh said suddenly, the one you lost. Deho stopped walking. How did you know? I see it in your eyes when you look at Nala. The pain of loss. The need to protect what remains. Koresh's voice was gentle. We are not so different, your people and mine. Deho resumed walking slowly. Her name was Hana. She was 6 years old. Pirates attacked our transport ship 3 years ago. They wanted the cargo. My wife Mi-sun tried to hide Hana, but he couldn't finish the sentence. And you survived, Koresh said. It wasn't a question. I was in a different section of the ship. By the time I got there, it was too late. Deho's voice was flat, emotionless. He had learned to talk about it this way, as if it had happened to someone else. I've been running ever since. Came to this colony because it was far away from everything. But you stopped running when you saw Nala, Koresh observed. I guess I did. Deho looked down at the small alien child who had fallen asleep in his arms. I couldn't watch another child die. Not if I could help it. They reached Deho's quarters and he carefully laid Nala on his bed. She curled up immediately, her light patterns dimming to a soft glow as she slept. Koresh stood in the doorway, too large to comfortably fit in the small human dwelling. I must prepare my ship for battle, she said, but I need to know that Nala will be safe. There is a bunker beneath your supply depot, yes? The colony's emergency shelter? Yes, Deho confirmed. It was built to withstand mining accidents, reinforced walls, independent life support, the works. Good. When the attack comes, you will take Nala there. No matter what happens on the surface, you stay underground until I come for you. Do you understand? I understand, Deho said. Then after a moment he added, Koresh, thank you for trusting me with her. The Velkari warrior was silent for a long moment. In my culture, we do not give trust easily. It must be earned through action and proved through sacrifice. You earned Nala's trust when you fed her, knowing nothing about her or her people. You proved it when you chose to fight rather than run. That is more than enough for me. She turned to leave, then paused. Your daughter, Hana. She would be proud of you, I think. You have honored her memory today. Before Deho could respond, Koresh was gone, moving with surprising silence for such a large creature. He stood in the doorway for a moment, watching her disappear into the gathering darkness, then returned to his quarters. Nala was still asleep, her breathing soft and steady. Deho sat in a chair beside the bed, watching over her. His hands were shaking slightly, the adrenaline of the day finally catching up with him. Tomorrow an alien war fleet would arrive. Tomorrow they would fight for their survival against odds that any sane person would call hopeless. Tomorrow he might die. But tonight, a small child slept safely because of choices he had made. Tonight, he had stopped running from his past and started fighting for something that mattered. His communicator beeped. It was Taman. Deho, we need you at the depot. Koresh is showing us her ship's weapon systems, and she says you should see this. Something about understanding what we're up against. I'll be there in 5 minutes, Deho replied. He looked at Nala again, then carefully covered her with a blanket. She stirred slightly but didn't wake. Sunoke appeared at his door, slightly out of breath. Governor asked me to watch Nala while you're gone. Also, I wanted to talk to you about something I found in the Velkari cultural database. What is it? Deho asked as they walked. The life debt Koresh swore to you. It's not just about protection. In Velkari culture, when a warrior swears that oath, they're binding their honor and their future to the person they're protecting. The enemy fleet arrived exactly when Koresh predicted. 12 massive warships emerged from the darkness of space, their hulls gleaming with the same biomechanical design as Koresh's vessel. But these were built for war. Each ship bristled with weapons, and their combined firepower could have reduced the entire colony to ash in minutes. Deho watched the ships descend from the view screen in the underground bunker. Nala sat beside him, her light patterns flickering anxiously. She hadn't said much since waking up, but she seemed to understand that something terrible was about to happen. All units, this is Commander Hyunwoo. Hold your positions until the enemy commits to a ground assault. If they start orbital bombardment, evacuate to the deeper tunnels immediately. Deho's hand tightened on the communicator. Above them, Koresh's ship was rising to meet the enemy fleet, a single warrior against an army. It seemed like suicide, but Koresh had insisted. She needed to draw their attention, make them angry enough to send ground forces instead of simply destroying the colony from orbit. The view screen showed Koresh's ship racing toward the enemy formation. Energy weapons lit up the sky as both sides opened fire. Koresh's ship moved like nothing Deho had ever seen, spinning and diving through the incoming fire with impossible precision. "She's targeting their command ship," Sunoke said, studying the tactical display. She had set up a monitoring station in the bunker, tracking everything she could. Smart. If she can damage Krell's ship, he'll take it personally. An explosion lit up the screen as one of Koresh's missiles struck home. The lead enemy ship's shields flared and collapsed. Koresh immediately pressed her advantage, raking the vessel with plasma fire. Parts of its hull began to burn. "Incoming transmission," Sunok said. "It's Krell." The screen changed, showing a Velkari warrior who looked similar to Koresh but larger, his armor darker and more elaborate. His face was twisted with rage. "Koresh, you dare stand against your own people for these weak humans?" "I stand for honor, Krell." Koresh's voice came back, calm and steady despite the battle raging around her. "Something you abandoned when you poisoned a child. That child is a symbol of your failed leadership." Krell snarled. "The council was right to remove you. You grew soft, Koresh. You forgot that strength is all that matters." "No," Koresh replied. "I learned that strength without honor is nothing but brutality. That is why I will defeat you." Another explosion rocked Krell's ship. Alarms blared on the enemy vessel, and Deho could see crew members scrambling in the background. Koresh had hit something vital. "All ships, break formation," Krell shouted. "3 of you pursue Koresh. The rest land ground forces. I want that colony burned to the ground and every human dead. Here they come." Hyunwoo's voice crackled over the communicator. "Everyone to your positions. Remember the plan. Let them land. Let them think they have the advantage." Deho felt his heart racing. He pulled Nala closer and she wrapped her small arms around him. Through the bunker's sensors, he could see enemy landing craft descending on the colony. Dozens of them, each carrying warriors who had trained their entire lives for combat. The landing craft touched down in the colony center, their ramps dropping to release waves of armored soldiers. They moved with terrifying efficiency, spreading out to secure key positions. Their weapons swept the area looking for targets, but the colony appeared deserted. Buildings stood empty, doors hanging open. The only sound was the wind blowing across the red dirt. "Where are they?" one enemy warrior said, the translation software picking up his words. "Scanners show life signs underground." "The tunnels," another replied. "They are hiding in the mining tunnels like vermin." "Good," a larger warrior said, clearly the ground force commander. "Then we dig them out. Split into assault teams. Clear every tunnel. Leave no survivors." The Velkari warriors began moving toward the tunnel entrances. They were cautious but confident, weapons ready. They had no reason to fear a fight against untrained colonists. They were about to learn differently. The first assault team entered the northern tunnel entrance. There were 20 warriors moving in a tight formation. Their armor lights illuminated the rough-cut stone walls as they advanced deeper. Then the tunnel exploded. The mining charges Deho and his team had placed brought down tons of rock and dirt. The explosion echoed through the underground network, followed by screams that were cut short. "Northern team is gone," someone shouted on the enemy communication channel. "The tunnel collapsed. Trap!" The ground commander snarled. "They anticipated us. All teams, proceed with caution. Scan for explosives." But scanning for explosives did them no good when the humans attacked from ambush. In the eastern tunnel, Hyunwoo and his security forces waited in prepared positions. When the next Velkari team entered, they opened fire with weapons Koresh had given them. The plasma bolts caught the enemy warriors by surprise, cutting down 3 before they could react. The Velkari fought back fiercely, but the narrow tunnel gave them no room to maneuver. Hyunwoo's team used mining equipment to create barriers, firing from behind improvised cover. When the enemy tried to advance, Taemin triggered another set of charges, sealing off their escape route. In the western tunnel, Sunoke had set up an even nastier surprise. Industrial chemicals mixed together created a toxic gas that sent the enemy warriors fleeing back to the surface, their armor unable to filter out the human-made poison. "This is insane," one Velkari warrior shouted. "They're fighting like cornered animals." "Because we are cornered," Daeho heard Hyunwoo respond over the captured communication channel. "But we're not animals. We're humans, and we're done running." Above ground, the battle in space was equally intense. Koresh had destroyed one enemy ship completely and damaged 2 others, but her own vessel was taking heavy fire. Shields were failing and hull breaches were spreading. "Koresh, you need to retreat," Daeho called over the communicator. "You can't take on all of them alone." "I do not retreat," Koresh replied, her voice strained. "But you are correct. I need a different strategy." Her ship suddenly dove toward the planet's surface, the 3 pursuing vessels following close behind. She led them on a deadly chase through the atmosphere, using the planet's terrain to her advantage. Mountains and canyons became weapons as she forced her pursuers into positions where they could not fire without risking hitting each other. One enemy ship wasn't fast enough. It clipped a mountain peak and spiraled into the ground, exploding in a massive fireball. 2 down, Koresh said with grim satisfaction. 10 to go, but the respite was brief. The remaining ships were regrouping, preparing for a coordinated assault. And on the ground, the enemy commander was growing desperate and angry. "Enough of these games," he roared. "Bring up the heavy weapons. We will collapse every tunnel and bury them all." Daeho felt cold fear grip him. If they collapsed all the tunnels at once, everyone would be trapped underground. They would die slowly, suffocating in the darkness. "Hyunwoo, did you hear that?" He called. "I heard," the commander replied. "We need to draw them into the deep tunnels. Make them commit all their forces underground before they can set up those heavy weapons." It was a desperate gamble, but they had no choice. "All teams fall back to the central hub," Hyunwoo ordered. "Make it look like we're retreating. Let them think they have us trapped." The human defenders began pulling back, firing as they went. The Velkari warriors pressed after them, sensing victory. More and more enemy troops poured into the tunnels, abandoning caution in their eagerness to finish the fight. That was exactly what the humans wanted. The central hub was the largest chamber in the entire mining network. It was where all the major tunnels met. A massive cavern that could hold hundreds of people. The humans had turned it into a killing ground. The enemy warriors poured into the chamber from multiple entrals, expecting to find trapped, defenseless colonists. Instead, they found prepared defensive positions, heavy mining equipment modified into weapons, and humans who refused to surrender. The battle became chaos. Energy weapons lit up the darkness. Explosions shook the walls. The Velkari warriors were better trained and better armed, but the humans had the advantage of position and desperation. Daeho watched it all from the bunker's monitors, his heart in his throat. He saw Taemin take a plasma bolt to the shoulder and keep fighting. He saw Sunoke operating a massive mining laser, cutting through enemy armor like paper. He saw ordinary colonists, farmers and technicians and teachers standing their ground against trained warriors. Then Nala suddenly pulled away from him, her eyes wide. She was staring at the monitors, her light patterns flashing in urgent patterns. "What is it?" Daeho asked, but he couldn't understand her response. Nala ran to the bunker door, trying to open it. Daeho grabbed her, pulling her back. "No, you can't go out there. It's too dangerous." But Nala kept struggling, making those urgent chirping sounds. She pointed at one of the monitors, and Daeho finally understood. Koresh's ship had been hit. Bad. It was falling from the sky, trailing fire and smoke. The ship crashed into the ground several miles from the colony, the impact sending up a massive plume of dirt and debris. "Koresh," Daeho shouted into his communicator. "Koresh, respond." There was only static. On the enemy communication channel, Krell's laughter rang out. "The great Koresh has fallen, all units." The colony's emergency transport was barely functional, but it was all Daeho had. Sunoke had arrived at the bunker within minutes, and though she had argued against his plan, she had finally accepted it. Now Nala stood at the bunker entrance with Sunok, her light patterns flickering with distress as she watched Daeho prepare to leave. "I'll bring her back," Daeho promised, looking at the small alien child. "I swear it." Nala made a soft chirping sound and ran to him, pressing something into his hand. It was a small crystal that glowed with the same light as her patterns. Daeho didn't know what it meant, but he carefully tucked it into his pocket. "That's a family crystal," Sunok said quietly. "Having accessed more Velkari cultural data, she's marking you as clan. That means something important to them." Daeho nodded, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. He climbed into the transport and gunned the engine. The vehicle lurched forward, bouncing across the rough terrain toward the smoke rising from Koresh's crash site. The journey took 15 minutes that felt like hours. Daeho kept expecting enemy ships to spot him, to cut him down from the sky. But the Velkari forces seemed focused entirely on the crash site, converging from multiple directions. He saw the wreckage before he reached it. Koresh's ship had plowed a deep furrow in the red dirt, leaving a trail of twisted metal and sparking systems. The main hull was cracked open, smoke pouring from dozens of breaches. Daeho landed the transport behind a rock formation and grabbed the plasma rifle Koresh had given him days ago. His hands were shaking, but he forced them steady. He had no military training, no combat experience beyond the desperate fight in the tunnels. But he had something else. He had a debt to repay. Daeho approached the wreckage cautiously, listening for any sound. He could hear enemy transports landing nearby, voices shouting in the Velkari language. He didn't have much time. "Koresh," he called softly, climbing through a breach in the hull. The interior was dark and filled with smoke. Sparks rained from damaged systems. "Koresh, where are you?" A weak groan came from deeper in the ship. Daeho scrambled toward it, using his hands to pull himself through twisted corridors. He found her in what looked like a command center, pinned beneath a fallen support beam. Her armor was cracked and bleeding a luminescent blue fluid. 2 of her 4 arms hung limp. Her golden eyes were dim with pain, but they focused on him when he appeared. "You should not be here," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Foolish human." "Yeah, well, I've been called worse," Daeho said, trying to figure out how to move the beam. It was massive, far too heavy for him to lift alone. "You saved my colony. Now I'm returning the favor." "The life debt flows from me to you, not the reverse," Koresh said, but there was something in her voice that might have been gratitude. "Then consider this friendship instead," Daeho replied. He found a piece of metal debris and jammed it under the beam, creating a lever. "On 3, 1, 2, 3. He threw all his weight against the lever. The beam shifted slightly, and Koresh used her good arms to pull herself free. She collapsed against the wall, breathing heavily. "Can you walk?" Daeho asked. "I can fight," Koresh replied, which wasn't really an answer. She tried to stand and nearly fell. Daeho caught her, his knees buckling under her weight. "We need to get you back to the colony," he said. "The others can help." "No time," Koresh said. She pulled up a damaged holographic display from her armor. "Krell is here. He is coming for me personally. If he finds me like this, he will execute me and then destroy your colony anyway. Then we fight," Daeho said simply. Koresh looked at him for a long moment. Then she laughed, a sound that was half pain and half genuine amusement. "You are insane." "You know that?" "It's been mentioned," Daeho said. He helped her toward the exit, supporting as much of her weight as he could manage. They made it outside just as the enemy forces arrived. 3 transports landed in a triangle around the wreckage and dozens of warriors poured out. And in the center, carried on a command platform, was Krell. He was even larger than Koresh, his armor gleaming with symbols of rank and achievement. He stepped down from the platform and walked toward them with the confidence of someone who has already won. "Koresh," he called out, his voice booming. "Look at you, broken and weak, defended by a single human. How far you have fallen." "Fallen?" Koresh straightened, pulling away from Daeho's support. She stood on her own, swaying slightly but defiant. "I learned something these humans taught me, Krell. That strength is not just about power. It is about who you protect and why you fight," Krell laughed. "Pathetic. These humans are nothing. Weak, soft, short-lived creatures who will be forgotten in a generation." "You're wrong," Daeho said, stepping forward. His voice shook, but he forced himself to speak. "We're here, aren't we? We fought your warriors in the tunnels. We bloodied your troops and made you pay for every inch of ground. And now I'm here, standing between you and her, even though I know I'm probably going to die. He raised the plasma rifle. So go ahead. Call us weak, but remember that a weak human fed your daughter when she was dying. A weak human colony stood and fought when you expected them to surrender. And this weak human is telling you that if you want Koresh, you'll have to go through me first. The enemy warriors shifted, clearly uncertain. This wasn't what they had expected. Their culture valued strength and honor, and here was a weak creature showing more courage than any of them. Krell's expression darkened. You dare challenge me? According to Velkari law, Koresh said, her voice growing stronger, I have the right to name a champion to fight in my place. I name Deho of Earth. Krell stared at her in disbelief. You cannot be serious. He would be dead in seconds. Then it will be a short fight, Koresh replied. But it will be an honorable one. Unless you are afraid to face a weak human. The challenge hung in the air. Deho could see the calculation in Krell's eyes. If he simply ordered his warriors to attack, he would look like a coward who feared losing to a human. But if he accepted the challenge and lost, very well, Krell said finally. He drew a massive blade from his armor easily 6 feet long. I will grant you an honorable death, human. It is more than you deserve. Deho swallowed hard. He had no idea how to fight with a blade. He was a supply depot manager, not a warrior. But he thought about Nala, about his friends in the colony, about everything they had fought for, and he thought about his daughter Hana, who he had failed to protect. This time would be different. Krell attacked with terrifying speed, his blade a blur of motion. Deho barely managed to dodge, the weapon passing so close he felt the heat of it. He fired the plasma rifle, but Krell's armor absorbed the impact easily. Pathetic, Krell snarled, swinging again. Deho rolled to the side, his mind racing. He couldn't match Krell's strength or speed. But Koresh had said something about humans being clever, about fighting with intelligence rather than just courage. He needed to make Krell angry, make him careless. You know what I think? Deho called out, backing away from another strike. I think you're scared. Scared that Koresh is right. Scared that if she comes back, your own people will see you for what you are. A coward who poisons children. Krell roared in fury and charged. Deho waited until the last second, then dove to the side. Krell's momentum carried him forward, directly toward a piece of the crashed ship that was still sparking with electrical energy. Deho fired the plasma rifle at the sparking system. The explosion knocked Krell backward, his armor smoking. The enemy commander staggered, stunned. Deho didn't hesitate. He ran forward and jammed the plasma rifle against a joint in Krell's armor, the weak point Koresh had taught him about during their training session. He fired at point-blank range. Krell screamed and fell to his knees, his armor cracked and bleeding. Deho stood over him, the rifle pointed at his head. Yield, Deho said. It's over. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Krell began to laugh, a bitter sound. A human defeated me. A weak, soft human. Perhaps Koresh was right after all. He looked up at his warriors. Lower your weapons. The challenge is complete. By our laws, Koresh has won. The enemy warriors stood down, their weapons powering down. It was over. They had actually won. Deho felt his legs give out and he collapsed to the ground, shaking with exhaustion and adrenaline. Koresh limped over to him, using her good arms to help him up. You did well, Clankin, she said softly. Better than I could have hoped. I can't believe that worked, Deho admitted. It worked because you understood what humans do best, Koresh said. You think differently. You find solutions where others see only problems. That is your strength. Krell struggled to his feet, assisted by his warriors. He looked at Koresh, and there was something in his expression that might have been respect. What now? Will you execute me? No, Koresh said. You will return to our homeworld and tell the council what happened here. Tell them that I have found allies who are worth more than all their political games. Tell them that I reclaim my position, and I do so with honor. She placed one hand on Deho's shoulder. And tell them that humanity is under my protection. Any who threaten them will answer to me. Krell nodded slowly. It will be done. He gestured to his warriors, and they began boarding their transports. As the enemy fleet departed, Deho and Koresh stood together, watching them go.